Once you have your elastic applied, open the seam, flatten the elastic to the side of your smaller fabric, like so, and do a zigzag from one edge to the other, or a top stitch, a straight stitch if you want. Okay? This will stabilize the seam against the second fabric, and it's like an understitch. You will not see it once it's on the right side. Okay? So to the smaller sides, open and do the understitch all along the seam. Do the same for the other one. As you can see, it's done. This is much perfect than this one. I don't know what happened here in the beginning. Oh, I might be crazy. So when you fold the fabric, because this will be your top seam, you will see that the fabrics align perfectly on the lower edge here. So this is why we removed the seam allowance from our second fabric, because when we do this technique, this means that we actually really need to remove the seam allowance from the top edge where we did this. If we don't do it, we will end up with excess fabric on your second fabric. And this is a technique I do on swimwear and on the waistline. We even have the 𝗹𝗰𝗲 bottoms videos, tutorials showing you how to do this, so you have no seam visible and it's not reversible. As you know, I think the non-reversible fit much better. So we now have our top seams ready here. This doesn't want to close, so I'm going to place a clip here so that just I don't lose myself and I know which is my right and left cup. And we are now ready to combine the lower cups with the upper cup. And how am I going to do? I'm going to show you on one side. So our goal is, just like we did here, that we hidden the seam, is to do the same on this seam here. So I'm going to match the notch from my main side. This is facing up on the table, so my main sides and my main side facing up, and I'm going to align the notch here, only this fabric. So I'm going to align the notch here, and I'm going to place one clip, and I'm going to align. If you want, you can do a basting stitch securing the two layers of the lower cup together so that they don't dance around when now you are doing this. I don't feel I need to, but if you need to, go ahead and baste them before you do this step. And now I'm going to align the entire seam. I'm going to pin. This fabric is very hard to pin. It's the first time that I'm working with it. It's beautiful. I'm obsessed with this color and the texture and the shine and everything, but it's hard to pin. Well, move on. Let's go ahead and pin all around, and then we can also secure our other fabric. But usually I like to do a basting stitch with these three fabrics together. And once that basting stitch is ready, we will then combine these with the other side of our upper cup fabric. It's easier, okay? I'm gonna do the easiest way for you. So go ahead and sew both of your cups in this line here. Only basting stitch, so a very long stitch, which you can then remove if you want, or if you don't want to remove, please do the stitch, not the complete distance that you have included for your seam allowance, but smaller, near the edge, okay? So that when we are finishing the seam, then we will make the stitch on the correct spot, okay? Now it's just to combine the three fabrics together, so closer to the edge, it's better, okay? Align everything, do the same for the other, and basting stitch. I changed my mind on the process. I'm gonna make it a little bit harder, sorry. But I think it will be very interesting to do, so I'm gonna do it. This is our cup, right? Sorry, let me place this like it was. And we want to have the lace here and these two here, right? And so on this seam here, I want to combine all the fabrics together. And to do so, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to do a basting stitch on my main sides, not the second, the main sides, and I'm going to do a basting stitch just to secure my lace on the edge here, okay? And that's the only thing I'm going to do for now with these two. Then I'm also going to sew these two together, just like we did for the satin fabric. I'm going to sew this seam, the vertical seam for our lower cups together with a straight stitch in the same seam allowance mentioned on the pattern, and I'm gonna sew this here, and I will then have one lower cup which I will place on top of this, and I will again do a basting stitch on the edge there also to secure the lace to my cup, and then I'll be back on the table. So go ahead and do exactly the same at home. So I already did the basting stitch. I could leave my lace as a separate piece of pattern and sew them together and then just place them on top of my satin, but I wanted to combine them and make them attached to each other on this seam, so that's why I did it. I'm doing it like so. I also did a top stitch here on the lace, just so that the lace has the same treatment that we did here. We just did the same here. And now I have finally my two fabrics, my lace attached, everything correct. I'm gonna find where my notch is, which I think I can see, but I'm gonna mark again where my notch is. Probably I'm just going to place like a pin, and I'm going to align the fabric like so, facing front with front, align them together. So I'm gonna align the notch, I'm gonna remove the pin, and then I'm going to align the edge on this side. Then I move to the other edge. If you watch the tutorial for the Marilyn top or for the Rudy, you will see that I always do like so. One edge, the notch, and then I go to the middle fabric between the notches and the edges of the fabric. And it's done. It's actually very easy to work this satin. So I'm gonna do the seam here using the seam allowance straight from one side to the other, and we will have these two fabrics together, and then I will tell you how we will even combine also the second sides of our upper cup. So I have sewn. If you want to remove your basting stitch from before, you can do it now. I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna show you first how to combine and actually how to finalize the cup, just by combining the second fabric from your upper cup. So imagine if you flatten your seam, you already have your cup and you can see the cup. You can do a top stitch here, which I'm going to do now. You can do a top stitch here to make this look very, very nice. But we want to actually sew so that we have this seam hidden. So we are going to sandwich just like I'm doing, okay? This one is here and this one will match this edge. And we will sew this edge. You need to clip and pin very carefully. And we are going to sew the edge from one side to the other, and then from one of the sides you will reverse this to the right side. So now we have our seam ready, and we will do a top stitch here, but not yet. First, tuck this in like a sandwich, and we will align this edge here. So again, make sure that you have your notch marked, which I don't have again. So I'm gonna mark the notch again. And match the notch, match the edges, and we will sew this from one edge to the other. this is something you need to be patient. You need to pull the fabric and adjust until you have the fabrics aligned correctly. And once that is sewn, using one of the holes on the side, we will be able to pull the entire cup to the right sides. So I'm going to the sewing machine, but instead of forcing the fabric to straighten up and to align everything, I'm just going to go with it aligned on these sides, the beginning of my sewing. And when I reach the middle here, I will pull the inside so that it's easier to align, okay? That's how I'm gonna do this. And here I have my sandwich. This is non-stretch, so it's not going to be easy to reverse it, but I will do it carefully and with patience. So I'm not gonna put it on camera probably. I'm just going to turn off camera and take my time. Okay, it took me less than 5 minutes, not that bad. You can iron if you want, so that it gets a little bit better shape, but I think it's fine. And as you can see, we have here a beautiful cup, and the lace is attached to the main fabric on this edge here, and the inside is also very nice. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and flatten this fabric and do a top stitch here from one edge to the other. And I'm also going to do some small stitches on the lace to secure the lace to the satin. But I'm only going to do those stitches once everything is flattened here and this top stitch is done. And of course, don't forget, we need to do the same for the other one. So I'm gonna set my cups aside. I already did some zigzag, very small stitches just to secure the lace on top of my fabric. You can see it on the inside, some stitches that I've done. I'm gonna set them aside for now, and I'm gonna do the bridge. So place right sides facing together of your lace and your main fabric. Align them and sew only on the top edge where I'm pinning here. Just sew that line there, and then opening and flattening the seam against your second fabric, so your satin, do an understitch just to stabilize this seam here and for it not to be visible. And we will then move on to our next step. I should have removed the seam allowance from my second fabric, so that when, just like we did on our cup, on our upper cup, so that when we flatten the lace against the fabric, you don't have excess fabric, and this way we do have excess fabric over there, if you can see, okay? And if you remove the seam allowance, we will not have this excess fabric here. Well, the bridge is here, and now instead of connecting the bridge to the cradle, I'm going to do something different, because I want, as I told you, to do different methods from my back, from the low for the under the arm elastic. And so what I'm going to do is, this is my outer fabric and this is my inner fabric. So on my outer fabric, I will have this, right? So my power mesh and this small bit of things that I've done here. And I'm going to combine these 4 fabrics together just by simply aligning them on the edge. I'm going to align them carefully, of course, and then I'm going to fold this to this side and I'm going to sew this edge here. And this is the main fabric, and it's done, okay? Then grab your second fabric, which is this soft power mesh, and again, right sides facing together. I can do the same method so that you understand. this is like this, and fold this to this side. And when I sew this together, I'm gonna sew this together. Don't forget that we want to then add our bone, and it will be applied on the second side. So I will sew this edge here, and then I will be back to do this. So I have done the sewing, and imagine when this is done, you want this on top of your fabric, right? It's the outer fabric. And on the opposite side, you want this beautiful shiny side. So seams will be against each other, and we want this for both sides. But what I want to show you now is, I'm gonna set this aside, how we are going to apply this here. Well, on the top seam here, we will apply rubber elastic from one edge to the other. And I don't know if you remember, but we removed seam allowance from the top edge here, remember, so that we could do the same that we did on the upper cup here. So we removed the seam allowance here and the seam allowance here. And this means that now when we place this, we need to remember that we need to have enough room for our seam allowance for the rubber elastic. So I'm gonna leave 1 centimeter to be sure. And on the lower part, I'm gonna leave 2 centimeters. So in fact, you can measure exactly 1 centimeter if you want, and 2 centimeters here on the lower part. So it's here and here. 2 centimeters is 2.5 centimeters is 1 inch. So this is less than 1 inch. And I'm going to sew the channel here until the line that I've drawn, and I'm gonna divide it between the two fabrics. So I'm gonna align more or less the middle with the middle of my seam here. My middle is here. Okay, this is where I'm gonna align the middle of my channel. And I'm just going to cut. First of all, I'm going to cut, so it's here. Let me mark with a pin. Oh. Okay. I think it's a little bit big, so let me trim more towards 3 millimeters. Yeah, now it's right. And when I sew this, I'm gonna be sewing on the sides so that the channel is still free. So I'm gonna sew on one side, and I'm gonna sew this on the other. I can pin this in place if I want to. I don't think I need to. I'm going straight to my sewing machine. And I'm gonna do the same on the opposite side.